Welcome to the podcast, everybody that's listening. This is a podcast, and it's the second year that I've done it. This is the beginning of season 2, if you want to call it that, episode 1. We're starting in February because, let's face it, February is kind of a better start to the year than January. I think January is probably the trial run, and then February is when we properly get going. And we are here today with Carllye, and she is going to be, well, she's very similar to me in many ways, blending ancient and kind of modern fitness practices. And she has an amazing story that she's going to share with us, which will be very inspirational for those people who are looking to start afresh this year, maybe looking for a boost and to make some big life changes. Probably it's never too late, I think, is one of the messages from today. So Carllye is the founder of the State of Mind School, and she also offers Reiki, emotional freedom technique, personal training, Pilates, breath work, and meditation, and she's qualified in all of those areas. And she works with people in in workshops, or maybe she is going to do retreats and we just manifested something. And she also works with people one-to-one, online and in person. So we'll just get started by getting to know Carllye a little bit more and sharing her inspirational story, because I think it's always great to hear the journey that people go on to get to where they are. It is not an easy feat. We always have those challenges. So over to you, Carllye. Please, if you'd like to share with us a little bit about you, easy question. Perhaps just starting with, I guess, how your journey began in terms of this personal development work, and where you came from in that.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, it was funny because we were just having a bit of a chat beforehand, and I was chatting to my husband before jumping on, and it kind of sort of was ringing true for me at the moment. I didn't start really looking deep at sort of healing as something to open up to new possibilities of life until much later. I tried at 18, but at 18 years old, that's when, alcohol and drugs kind of seemed a better fit than the deep work. So my journey is, look, it's not unique. There are, unfortunately, sadly, thousands upon thousands of children that suffer at the hands of a predator. And I did. This person was in my family, which I suppose made it quite difficult, because until 16, when he decided to actually kill himself, believe it or not, I held this secret, and I held it very well, not so well emotionally. And interestingly enough, as you start to do the healing work, you start to look back and go, oh my God, that's why. So at 8 years old, I had my tonsils removed because I had constant tonsillitis. And there was nothing in my head, even at 8 years old, was to tell what had happened to me with the sexual abuse that I suffered. And it wasn't actually until I was 18 and got my first boyfriend and started wetting the bed, embarrassingly, because I was having these nightmares. And, I remember I read a lot. I've since read a lot of books about trauma, and it is about, it does find its way out. So I decided to tell my parents. Well, I told my mother. I didn't want to tell my father because it was in his line of family. And so I told Mum, and she's like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. She's never sort of questioned or didn't believe me, because that was always a fear. And so we had 4 therapy sessions, and I'm like, oh, I'm cured. But I wasn't. But then at that point, that's when drugs and alcohol had entered my life, and escapism was a better fit for me. So I actually came over here so I'm Australian, as you would have guessed. I came over here. Like, where's that accent from? Melbourne, Australia. So I came over here and just absolutely partied for 2.5 years. I went back home Still didn't want to look at it. A lot of my friends were getting into Abraham Hicks and Tony Robbins, so I was following a lot of that stuff, and that's when I kind of got into meditation and mindfulness. But I also got married really quickly. So it's like, you start to look back like, whoa, these addictive behaviors. Like I married an American soldier after 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So I never, I'm a Scorpio. I've got 5 placements in Scorpio. So I definitely do not do things in halves. And he actually was sort of on the same drug journey as me as well. So, it was a trauma bond, that those words kind of come in again. These things that I'm mentioning, these are all like after 40 words. Before 40, that's not what I would have said. It was complete infatuation. And we were married for 7 years. And it was during that time that I started actually looking like, oh, I want more. And so I gave up marijuana, kept drinking. And then decided to do an MBA because I thought that was going to fix me. And this is the whole thing, like the lens looking back, it was always about things that were going to fix me, always outside of myself, external validation, external things, trying to feel what, because I'm now in recovery, we say, hole in the soul. It's like trying to fill this hole in the soul with these external things, whether it be alcohol, more money, achievement. I got into triathlons. Like it was always looking for things to solve the internal problem. And it wasn't until I sort of got out of that relationship, I went and did all of Anthony Robbins, like spent 20 grand, again, I'll throw money at this thing. This will fix me. And I met my now husband, and we again, fell in love quite quickly, got married, had a child. And it was that birth of Zoe that I think, I'm getting choked, sorry.
I just got shivers. I'm getting shivers.
I'm like feeling this. Sorry. Whoa, I'm so sorry. I don't know. Yeah. It was her birth. That really, I think, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I tell you, Alice, I did everything too. When she came out, and I haven't actually told this story to a very small group of people, but I need to be safe in the matter because this isn't now, like this was a part of the healing. And I suppose I really do want anyone to know this, because if it helps someone out there, because when Zoe came out, I lifted her up, I put her on me. And it'd been a fairly traumatic birth. It'd been about 50 hours. Everything was kind of going wrong, but I was so determined for it to be a natural birth. It was like, again, that, that fierceness within me, but it nearly turned out quite wrong. And she was then handed to Steve. And I remember looking at her going, I've got it. What the hell? Like, I don't want to be a mum. She can't be here. And some really awful things of not wanting her to be here at that time. And I should have, at that point, I shouldn't should myself, but it would have been a kind, compassionate thing to do would be to tell somebody that something's going on. But I didn't. I lied through gritted teeth for about 3 months, but I was not well. I was not well. I was struggling. And I finally told my husband, and then I told my mum, we got some help and what have you. But it was really that journey through being a parent, because for the first time in my life, I had this beautiful little girl looking at me. And all the things I couldn't stand in myself, she was looking back at me, almost reflecting it, and not the negative things, but it was almost like the things I couldn't stand in me, she was shining on me, because it was like I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had these little eyes looking at me. But 5 years, I'll tell you, 5 years. It wasn't. It was, so I had her at 35, and at about 40, things got pretty bad. And it was when I think the pandemic hit when I was about 41. And it was that was the catalyst, because there was nothing I could do to distract anymore. There was no, I didn't end up doing my business online, because I was doing Pilates and meditation, what have you. And it just, when that hit, I just, everything stopped for me. Everything stopped. And I couldn't hide anymore. And I was in the house with my mirror, my daughter, my poor husband, who was sort of having to deal with all this. And it was at that point that the drinking got worse. The nightmares started again. I was self-harming. Self-harm is a part of my journey. So not only was I using alcohol, but I was using knives. It's hard to say that, but that is the truth. And I remember being at my absolute breaking point and going into therapy about 41, still drinking, still masking. And then I woke up on the 1st of January 2021 and decided to finally go in to recovery. And I decided to go into AA because my sister was in NA. We have a similar journey with recovery, and it was her beautiful journey that helped me see where I could, rise above the escapism that I'd put into myself. And that was, honestly, that was the catalyst. That was the catalyst, because once I started to clear the brain, the fog from the alcohol, I'd sort of given up drugs a lot longer before that. I think I really stopped doing sort of hard drugs around 31, 32. But the alcohol, because it's so acceptable, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Why aren't you having a drink? I still remember what is that? There's some stupid thing on Instagram, some comedians it's about peanut butter or something. Like, you don't like peanut butter? Why are you eating peanut butter? It's like, like associated, why aren't you drinking? And I know for me, I mean, I definitely got in enough pain with it. But if you looked at the way I was drinking, I would say, probably 30% of women drink how I was drinking. The different was I was in pain. Not only was I in physical pain, like I was actually, I was burnt. Like my skin was burnt. Like my body was fiercely rejecting. And I was not willing to go, oh, it was that problem. I mean, the amount of doctors and dermatologists I went to, again, I mean, I threw everything at not looking at the, not opening the cupboard. I threw everything at it. I mean, I will say I'm very proud at the amount of work I did to fully run away from this stuff.
Yeah.
But well, I'm very proud of myself for that. But it's funny because I think we spoke about like the honoring of that person. I think you actually spoke on your Instagram, to honor that. You need to I need to honor that, Carllye, because I'm here, and there was a time I didn't want to be. I mean, I sat in psychology sessions, like mapping out like how, and I know I had to out myself because I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to be here. And I was like, well, if I run the car into a tree with Zoe, so I'm like, I know this sounds crazy, but this is my head was like, well, I need to kill Zoe as well. I can't have her grow up without a mum. And then my therapist, she was excellent. She'd be like, well, what about Steve? I'm like, but if he's in the back, he possibly won't die. Like it was, it was insane because I was in so much pain. I was like,
and was this whilst you were drinking still that you were,
Yeah. And then a little bit, I suppose the first 6 months of recovery, it was a struggle to do life without something. And that's when the self-harm became it became my new dopamine hit. It became my new escapism. And I would do it in a way that, I mean, I said, I have got scars, but I would, I would work out a way to still be sneaky, because that was how I was best. My whole life has been, how can I hide this from everyone? I mean, even my poor husband didn't realize, one, that how badly I was self-harming, or two, how much I was drinking. It was 3 months into my sober journey that he said, oh, well, maybe one day you'd be able to have a drink, when I'd had a meltdown. And I'm like, oh, I think I need to show you something.
Mm.
I showed him where I'd been sort of hiding. I showed him that because I could kind of hide the legs. I couldn't hide the arm for
Yeah.
him, but it was just, again, that, maybe that's the Scorpio in me. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But, it's like, just don't show, don't be vulnerable, because the running, and this is what has been interesting. The running story I have always had in my head up until recently, starting the real deep work, is one, I'm disgusting. Two, there is innately something wrong with me, which then led to me, three, hiding these darker parts of me.
Yeah.
In absolute fear of judgment, fear of people using it against me, and fear of thinking people that I was pathetic and weak.
And do you know what just came to my mind there was that when we hide those darker parts of ourselves, they kind of fester in us, don't they? They create more toxicity, more pain, and they fester in there. Whereas when we allow those elements to kind of be acknowledged and because almost to move through us, then they can be released. But we need to shine the light on them first of all.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of took so long to recognize, because for me, I mean, even now, I mean, even like I'm talking even last week, it's always, and my sponsor, who's unbelievable woman, it's like whatever you resist persists. So here I am trying to resist or trying to move it, using my own paradigm still, like the old paradigm, it still jumps in now to this day of, punish it away, run it away, get angry with yourself. Why? Question it.
Yeah.
And she's like, Carllye, just integrate it. Just let it become a part of you. Like, because then the light in you, as you said,
Yeah.
it will move through you, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I am like, I always say like, oh, I'm probably, I think I started looking at this stuff 15 years ago. It's like, well, no, I'm a baby. I'm like 3 years in. Now I believe it can collapse time, but still I am a baby. And this stuff is still going to come up. I have done so much work around reducing the emotional charge in the body from the abuse. And, I had a horrible thing happen at 16. I was sexually assaulted by a sober person. I was completely drunk. And I've done shite loads of work around that as well. But in with all that is still this knowing that I'm not to be fixed. And this is what's been really hard. I don't need to be fixed.
So this is, I think, like a lot of people who are, including myself, and it probably sounds similar to you, is that you feel like you've done a certain amount of work, and yet why is the stuff still coming up?
Yes. And as I said, that was the challenge last week. I mean, I was on the floor in the bathroom, heaving, crying, because I'm just why is this fear coming up? Why is this like you're disgusting? And like, the other thing that I've not thought about this for years, but it was like you caused the abuse came up, and that's something I'm like, well, whoa, we cleared this. You know what I mean? And I sort of like sat up and I was like, hang on a second. We cleared this. You know what I mean? I'm like, I almost needed to speak to that part of saying, I'm not too sure why you've come up again. I've cleared this. Almost like, dude, like let's not go back into that. You are absolutely fine. You don't have to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with you. And that has been the most challenging thing that still I think is, maybe it's just going to be an evolution with me or with anybody, that when you are at your most vulnerable, that's when these things are like, oh, hang on, there was still a tiny bit of dirt that maybe we didn't sweep up. So I'm just gonna show myself with it, and it's hard.
Well, I guess if like we think about the, say our houses or cars or whatever, it's really annoying, but they always need to be cleaned.
That's a
They
great
always need
analogy.
Yeah, there's always going to be a little dirt that comes in. There's always going to be maybe that one spot that always gets a little bit dirtier that you have to like clean a little bit harder. I just thought of it now, but it always needs that kind of maintenance, I think. And maybe this is the approach that we need to have. And I think we have like a solution kind of fix based society, which is like you're broken and this is how I'm going to fix you.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a little bit different, a different kind of perspective we need to that. I was going to ask you, do you find that, because you do PT and a lot of physical practices, do you find that movement has been like a source of medicine for you, particularly if you're going into like a mental spiral? Do you
Yeah. I
think,
mean, I
yeah,
have used, I mean, I was a gymnast from about 4 years old. And I mean, I I have used and abused fitness as a punishment. And that is another journey. Like I would say most of my life, fitness was a punishment. It was, you're not feeling great, go and run until you vomit, because I had sort of like eating disorders as well. And now, as I said, again, I'm a baby with this. I'm an absolute baby with this. Now so I went for a run today, and I've been running 3 times a week if people follow me on Instagram. And I used to do triathlons and, like, oh, look at me, I'm so bloody fit. And then, my husband went through a fairly major mental crisis, and then that kind of stopped. And I found myself struggling to get back into running. And so today I did the run because I want to be consistent. And, because that's really important to me to maintain a consistent fitness. But I only ran 4K. And again, that's another evolution of, well, you still do it, right? But maybe some days, and it's so funny because my dad used to say this to me all the time. And, it's starting to range through all this stuff. Give 100% of whatever percentage you've got. And he used to say that. If you've got 20%, give 100% of that 20%. And so today I was like, okay, I think I've got about 60, 70%. I gave 100% of that 60, 70%. And, and that's how I use movement now. Instead of it like, all right, I said I was going to do a 45-minute, lower body workout and then, go for a run. It's like, okay, I said I was going to do that. But if I'm in it and something's not feeling right, then I'm allowed to change it. I'm giving myself permission to actually, for the first time, and I'm 45 now, to listen to my body. And it's a game changer. It's a game changer. And movement is more enjoyable now. Like, I mean, I would say this, when I was a gymnast, I absolutely loved it. Like movement for me as a gymnast, and I said, I still do handstands and splits and stuff now. Like there's something about, when you do something so young,
yeah,
get that childhood joy out of it. But the other stuff, movement is 100% medicine. And I absolutely love that term.
yeah.
But it's movement with what feels good in that moment for your body. And that can be really hard because I think we're taught not to listen to our bodies. And me in particular, especially if you've suffered childhood trauma, as I said, there's a lot of research around. I mean, Gabriel Mate speaks a lot about this stuff. And there's a really good book. It's not by him, it's by Basil von Koth, When the Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
And talk about, the disconnect you have to apply because of what's happened. So I think that was the whole thing. I had a massive disconnect with the body. And that's why I was able to self-harm, I think, because it wasn't my body. It was a tool for me to get release instead of, oh, this is your body. And maybe your body needs to come back to a bit of love and compassion right now. So maybe doing a hard run to your vomit's not a great thing. Maybe running a bit because, you do want to have that consistency. And, I've just finished all David Goggins' books. However, I think he's but I enjoyed them, but that's very masculine. And I've lived way too much in that energy. Feminine energy is something I need. I am working really hard to bring in because it is it is a real challenge. And it's interesting because when people meet me and see what I do, they probably think, oh, you're so gentle and blah, blah, blah. And I am externally, but the internal dialogue is still that masculine
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
Um,
I wonder
and
if that keeps you feeling safe as well, because it's familiar and it gives you structure and boundaries, and the feminine is very free flowing and kind of emotional and lightness and dark and cyclical. So that's can probably feel quite, it's not the comfort zone yet, I guess.
well, no, and when you've got on your Instagram cyclical living, and
Yeah.
you message me back going, oh, if it's not in sync, and I'm just like, what? Because like, I'm no joke. I've heard this. I've got friends that like work like this, and
Yeah.
I that, and I'll be completely honest with with you and anyone listening, that is so far from my realm of existence. I can remember women, when I was working at ANZ, I used to head up a marketing team, and of course lots of women, and they'll be like, oh, I can't come into work today, blah, 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 my period. And it's hard for me to admit, but this is what I was like. I'd be like, well, to be joking here, like, come on, because I would never acknowledge that my own body goes through cycles. And I don't even know what that cyclical living would mean. I have no idea. And I would actually love, as I said, I've put it down on my list. I'd love to chat to you about it and what that
Yeah.
actually means, because maybe that is a way of the evolution of me understanding more of that feminine.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got quite a few tools, but it's like, well, what does it actually mean to really honor the femininity of my body?
Yeah. We can
And
give
that,
you very quick things that would
yeah,
make sense for you. Well, the cycle is a blend of yin and yang. So you'd still get to keep some of that yang energy, that masculine, which you probably quite like. It's not giving it all over to just the feminine. And there's certain points of the cycle when you're kind of it's slightly different, the specific timings for everybody, but you have certain times in the cycle where you can really push more, like your body can handle a bit more, you're more stress resilient. And then there's other points in the cycle when you let yourself be still and rest and take on less responsibilities, less stress, maybe put more boundaries up. And it can be, you can kind of relate it to the moon phases.
yep.
It's really amazing. The kind of moon almost kind of can reflect exactly the way a woman's cycle runs, in terms of when we are ovulating and we're kind of we've got lots of estrogen and the progesterone's on its way. So we're quite high in hormones, which actually, side note, when people say people are hormonal, it
Yeah,
probably means that they're having a drop in hormones, because
yeah,
when we have high estrogen, high progesterone, estrogen makes us feel good and like, sensual and stuff, and progesterone makes us feel relaxed and can help us to sleep. And it's actually when our both of our hormones suddenly drop off at the end of our cycle, it's like going through a drug withdrawal. So what's
well, I know all
really
about that.
yeah, which is really interesting, you might find this fascinating, is that there's been studies that have said that women in particular have relapses most of the time around that last week before their period, when they're going through that withdrawal phase.
Yeah. Well, that,
So
I took a note, because I've been tracking my period, interestingly, since I got into recovery.
yeah,
And that, what is very interesting you say about that, I tend to ring my sponsor more the 4 or 5 days before. And then it's like, I get it. I'm like, what? There's nothing wrong with my life. Why and to burn it all down? I'm like, my life is great. That
yeah,
is right. So
yeah,
that's the drop.
yeah.
So this
So that
is,
you can prepare
I've
from that.
learned.
So if you know when your period is coming up roughly, you can kind of prepare like you would your partner would know then that's happening. So they would know that you would need maybe more support. You would put in more nourishing activities that keep you connected to your body and less in your head. You would maybe work a little bit less if you can. You would wait to have those important conversations until the week after, or those arguments that you want to have with your
No.
partner. Is a good time to journal them out. And it's very interesting when you read that journal a week after and you go, oh my God.
Who is this
And
person?
on a like spiritual level, because I did training with the Red School, the week that kind of part of your cycle, they say the self-critic comes out, and it's a really good time to journal, to acknowledge that self-critic, because sometimes there's a little bit of gold in there, but we're just saying it in a really harsh way at that point. So it's to kind of use that point to bring some awareness to what the self-critic is saying, so that the self-critic doesn't get ignored and then goes through your whole cycle. It kind of like trickles to your, so that's really interesting. And then using your kind of periods time when you're menstruating is a time to, if you can, or just set that intention to do less, to have some time to recharge. And then when you come to ovulation, maybe you feel like you can do a little bit more, and that's a time when you feel confident, and you can kind of push a bit more. Push a bit harder.
And that's the thing, that I think that's why I'm so interested in it, because, like you said, it's like if we're running like this, this kind of like monthly cycle, and like the important meetings or important decisions. And if you're it's almost like, I liken to it like if you're making those decisions drunk, do you know what I mean? Or, you're not going to make the best decision.
Yes.
And that's why that's so interesting to me. And it's so, I love learning. I never, ever assume I know anything about anything. All I know is what I've read, but then that's all willing to change, because it's like, okay, well, there's a different perspective on this stuff. And so when I hear stuff like that, and I suppose this is something I do value in myself, of like, oh, let me know more. Let me have, understand that, where I think previous to this sort of like, healing journey, whatever, I would have used the inner critic, and mine's called Hulk, which I know sounds a bit awful, but it's the Hulk when he rips his green shirt off, but also the Hulk when he's normal. So there's like two, like, kind of like Pina, like, what's Pina? So punitive Hulk, I don't negotiate with him. When he rips off his shirt and he's like, you're fat, you're dumb, you're disgusting. I'm like, no, I don't negotiate. But then there's, as you said, there's the other sort of smaller Hulk that's sort of like, oh, okay, that's an interesting perspective. But before I would have gone, oh God, I don't know something, I'm dumb. Oh my God, why didn't I know that? Well, I've had a period now for, I don't know, like 20, 30 years, like, but you don't know what you don't know. And it's, that's what I find so interesting about that sort of stuff. It's this kind of karma, Carllye, in a way.
Yeah.
I use that term lately. I suppose maybe more at peace, Carllye, can sort of think about, we're just all here to, and I always say this, and my sister, I'm sure my sister, maybe she got it from somewhere, is learn, grow, and evolve. So I learn something, I grow into whatever that tool is, that modality, that way of being, and then hopefully it will evolve me. Now, evolve me doesn't mean that I'm then better than everybody else, because there'll be another thing that will come and go, oh, but what will evolve me into just being a whatever version of myself, and I come back to the thing of not a fixed version, not broken. And I say that out loud because I constantly need to remind myself of that. But a version that just is a bit more aligned with that path that she's moving through. It's really like, it would have been hard for me at 25 to have understood even what you just said then.
Yeah.
Because the voices in my head would be, honestly, you're just a pathetic, weak woman. That's what would have
Yeah.
gone off in my head.
Yeah.
Don't use your period as an excuse.
Yeah.
On with it. I'm not even kidding. But now I listen to that and I'm like, that is so interesting. Oh my God. Yeah, I've noticed that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just it's a different way of living. And I find that a lot of women, when I kind of talk about this, they're like, oh, that means I don't have to push all the time. I get
Listen.
scheduled rest. I don't just rest when I'm burnt out. I can actually use it as like a container to move through life. And it's much more interesting. We explore all the different types of ourselves, and I find, yeah, there's a lot of comfort in that experience of, and that voice in your head. Well, if we think about it, everything in our world is cyclical. The moon, the day, the
Season.
year, our lives, the seasons, our cycles. Um, so everything in nature is telling us this is the healthiest way to live, but yet our more kind of patriarchal society has kind of put in this kind of idea of linear living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And it doesn't work anymore.
Not sustainable.
No, it's not sustainable. And it's not sustainable within yourself. Because as you said, you go to burnout. I can't
Yeah.
tell you the amount of times I went to burnout. I mean, even last year, was it last August? Or maybe the August before, I had a friend's wedding. And I was in hospital on the Monday. The wedding was on the Friday. I was in hospital because I like everything stopped. I was spinning. I had vertigo. I was so sick. And then if I look back on those months beforehand, my family was here. I was pushing work. I was living in a place of lack, as in the more I push, the more I'll earn. The more I push, the more I earn. And everything just broke down. And the
Mm.
interesting thing is no one else got sick. This was supposed to be a virus that, everyone gets and blah, 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 like the flu. But no one else got sick in the house because I was the only one that broke, like the broken immune system. I was the only one that had pushed myself to complete and utter burnout. And it is difficult still, as I said, I know I've said it a few times, but I am early on in the journey and a lot of this stuff is deep seated with me. Like a lot of this stuff has really served me, I have been extremely successful in my life and I am fit. So I'm not denying it and I'm not telling it was wrong, but it's not going to, like you said, this linear society, it's not going to serve me into this next iteration of what Carllye after 45 is going to look like, is going to be, is going to offer the world. And unless I look at that, I'm going to repeat the same cycles. And that is enough for me to go, no.
Yeah.
Like brakes on no.
Yeah.
You
And you're
know?
living, I guess, instead of those cycles coming up unconsciously, you
Yeah.
live them consciously.
Yes. Yeah,
Conscious cycle.
oh,
So, because I
that
think
is a
about that
beautiful
with,
way to put it.
yeah, yeah, I think about with yo-yo dieting that a
Yeah.
lot of women seem to do, which is a kind of cycle in itself. So I've always thought there's a reason why more women do it than men, and it's something to do with our natural desire to live in cycles and the fluctuation of the hormones that we go through each month. And I just came to this epiphany that we could consciously yo-yo diet. We would never, it would be a totally different experience and healthier one. So in terms of understanding certain times of the month when you don't feel as hungry and you don't need to eat as much, and then allowing yourself to eat a little bit more at other times of the month. And I actually had an eating disorder when I was 18, I think it was. So part of my journey has been trying to find a way to um, be able to eat without being worried about putting on weight, starving myself. over exercising, under exercising, and I have been at the point where I've been severely underweight, and the point where it's probably a little bit more than kind of my natural set point.
Yeah.
And I think we all know what our natural set point is. It feels quite comfortable, and
Yeah.
you usually will just stay at that will be the weight that you'll naturally just always come back to. And I've managed to I've stayed at that for like quite a few years now.
Yeah.
When I stopped drinking alcohol, I actually deflated a little bit as well. And you can see it in my face.
Inflammation to do that. Pump
I
you up.
don't, yeah, it does. Inflammation. But I do follow more of a cyclical, intuitive way of eating, which means I never really go on it. I never go on it. I haven't dieted for a very long time. I just listen to my body, and I also try to eat natural foods and don't drink and things like that, which are kind of really they do really help, those types of things.
That's like a simple tool, isn't it? Like the simple tool is like if you can eat simply, like I stopped weighing. I used to weigh myself 2-3 times a day, and coming into sobriety, it was one of the things that I knew I had to give up, because it was a punishment.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what I was trying to achieve with it. But again, like that was only 3 years ago. I haven't weighed myself for 3 years. So maybe I've weighed myself maybe once or twice. Yeah, maybe once or twice in 3 years. But again, that's another sort of addiction, isn't it? Like if I look at that scale, that is going to determine if I have a good day. I mean, it's insane thinking, but there are still people out there in the community that do that, and it is such a disservice to what is this like this beautiful vessel we have. Like I have cellulite, I have scars from my own scars from 5 knee operations, like I've got stretch marks on my boobs. You know what I mean? I struggle with that still. I struggle with that, but I challenge the thought process around it. And that's what with all this stuff like you're talking about, like I think that's what comes out of it, is like you're not broken. So your thought process isn't broken, but is there a more compassionate, gentle way you can think about your body? Is there a nicer energy? And it might take some time, be like, oh, I need to lose weight, I'm fat. It's like, okay, well, let's just reframe that. Let's just say there's some extra weight on my body that makes me feel uncomfortable. And I like to feel comfortable and comfortable in my skin. So maybe releasing that weight might be a good thing for me, and good for my health. And even just that is more gentle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got more meaning to it as well, which I think is one of the biggest reasons that people don't make changes, is because it doesn't mean enough to them. Yeah. If I am trying to change my body because it is kind of like my vessel to live in, and it changes the way I interact with other people, or it improves my brain, and it changes how I am creative in the day. And like if there's a little bit more personal meaning to stuff, rather than trying to lose weight just because I want to look like that girl on Instagram, which we all do. And I think specifically if you're somebody that has been on a bit of a healing journey, probably likely to be someone that also compares themselves to other people. I think that's one of the misconceptions, is that people who have got to a certain point of doing the type of work we are doing is think that, oh, we're just like really like perfect people and have got it all together. And I actually think most of the people who do the work is because they've been through a lot, and also go through a lot emotionally and mentally on a daily basis. That's why we do the work, because we had to find these tools for ourselves, and then you want to share them with other people, I would say.
And there was a perfect thing, as I said, being a part of recovery, we get all these like readings and stuff shared with them. And there was this one just the other day, and it said, stop comparing your insides to other people's outsides. And
Yes.
that was like,
Ooh.
shit. It was like a truth bomb right in my hands. I'm like, that's it. Like, if there's stuff internally going on for me, I am going to have a completely different lens on what their external is, because I'm not in their world. I'm not living in themselves. And it's almost like, give yourself permission to be completely imperfect.
Yeah.
And bathe in it. Like, completely bathe in it, because that's what makes you authentically you. And, as I said, that's what I've struggled with, because I had no idea who I was. I probably still don't really know, but it's like, okay, well, what are the elements that are me? Like, what are the elements that are me? And I really do love to smile, but I'm also on the ground crying. And one of Zoe's friends the other day said to her mum, and her mum kindly said it to me, she goes, Zoe's mum is always so happy. And I thought, what a lovely thing for that person to think, because that is sort of like, I want people to see me as happy. But, the other week I actually posted a very vulnerable story on my Instagram, because I realized that I'm not actually showing my complete self, because I'm terrified still of that sadness, that, oh, she gets sad, and it's like, it's probably the first time in a very long time, if ever, that I was like, I'm just going to show people that today I'm struggling. Like, I'm struggling. I'm human. I'm struggling. And it is actually really hard. Even being on this podcast today, it's like I was ruminating in my head last night. Like, I couldn't get to sleep because I was so terrified of thinking, if I actually really vulnerably share what has happened to me, even know that there is a really lovely story that's come out of it, what are people going to think? I'm showing them my weakness. Can they hurt me? Could they, come at me? One of my best friends, she's an amazing woman, Anna Rose. And I say best friend because, she's just been such a powerful part of showing me how, coming from such pain, you can just blossom, and, we became friends over Instagram, believe it or not. I don't really get to see her that often. We talk a little bit. So, like, we're not best friends as in, like I'm seeing her every day, but she's like, maybe I should say, best example of someone that has owned every part of their journey, vulnerably shared, and shown how it has become a powerful statement to allow other people to blossom, and that's what she did for me. Nothing more than, showing her journey, showing what she did, and blossoming from it. So, like, I sit here and I'm like, well, I don't know how many people are going to listen to this, if anyone. Like, it's, like, I don't know. And, like, maybe they'll put it on and they're like, oh yeah, that's not really for me, and go to one of your other podcasts. I don't know. But I'm doing it because it is a part of me. I need to own it, and I need to show myself that, you're safe now. And I think this is what it's about, cathartically, something so simple as sharing this. It's like, you're safe now. You're actually safe. And, it's like, someone can't come at you with anything to do with that, because you've honored that person, and you've let them go, and they're free. They're free over there.
Yeah.
And I'm just here now, so it's, I mean, it's, I'll tell you what's funny. Steve and I were laying on the floor. I don't know why. I think we'd just done some stretches together. And I just turned around and said, God, this life is funny. I actually genuinely meant it. Like, this life is really funny. Like, it's just, it floors me every day that here we are, just, like, just hanging out in these kind of like flesh suits, like having these, interactions, on the floor crying 1 minute, laughing, it's just, I don't know. It's just seeing it as everything is just, everything is just how it's meant to be. And whatever this unknown of tomorrow is, like my friend Dawn said it beautifully. She's like, but you're an infinite being anyway. So whatever tomorrow holds, we're just going to exist, in an energetic love bubble anyway. And I was like, yeah. And it just
I
takes
like it.
that fear out of it, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
don't fear tomorrow. You're fine. You're just an energetic love bubble.
And I think that when you open yourself up on to awaken maybe a little bit more to what's going on in you,
Yeah.
you open up the door to more joy and pleasure, but you also open up to more pain. So you could, I mean,
Transmuting
actually,
the power.
and my therapist, she said, I was like, oh, but I don't want to do that anymore. Like, it's too much. She says, like, you've already taken the pill. It's too late.
Yeah, the train has
So
left the
I think
station.
because perhaps if somebody is kind of starting to open up, like, to, healing and awaken and become more conscious, that's why those physical practices are so important, because they ground us through the, and I think this is actually saying this is probably a reminder for myself of when you're on that journey, you're like, oh, but I feel like I've healed this, and but this keeps coming up, and it's like, well, you're probably just feeling a little bit more. And if you feel like you're somebody that feels more than other people, um, those physical practices are so important to ground you, like
Mm,
fitness, a good workout, yoga, meditation, dancing, sensual practices are so important, and it can help you. I think this is just a helpful reminder for people if you feel like you're somebody that always feels a lot, and why do other people not feel as much as me? It's because you're more open, and you will feel those highs a lot more. You'll also feel those lows, and
it's a gift. Yeah,
it's
like
a
stop pushing
gift.
it away, just stand out, get your bloody shoes off, people. Like I will say this, get your shoes off, just go and stand on the ground and have a good sob.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it is cathartic. And I look, I didn't let myself do that for a long time, and it came out, and hiding that part came out in more damaging ways than, having a sob on the ground.
Yeah.
It
And I
doesn't
think
have to, does
accepting
it?
that some people aren't on this journey, nor are they interested
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
dealing with their wounds and awakening, and not everyone is, and there's probably a lot of people that are in our lives that aren't, that we still love and have relationships with, and that can feel quite hard if they're on a they don't get it as
Yeah.
much as, and that's why I think having community, having
Yeah.
events to go to, having one-to-one sessions with somebody that understands, or somebody that is kind of interested
Yeah.
and aware,
Just hold
is
a bit
can
of
be.
space for you.
You what, sorry?
So just for,
Oh,
just for someone to hold a bit of space for you.
yeah, it's so
Yeah.
affirming, I think, and can be really helpful if you're feeling a little bit lonely, because it can feel quite lonely,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you
If you
don't
had that
have the
community.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that,
Yeah,
like that, and that, oh my gosh. I mean, that's why I went into like a 12-step program, because I did actually try to do it by myself, but I realized that I needed the community, and it is, and it doesn't, like, it doesn't matter what the community is, as long as the community can hold that space for you without judgment. And that's so important, because could it be a group of friends, or could it be just going to an event and hopefully meeting someone, or like it doesn't matter how you do it. It's just so important that you do, because like, I mean, they say, like, the opposite of addiction is connection, not in connection with self, but connecting with other people. We
yeah,
get told in the rooms all the time, like, your addiction, whatever it is, food, gambling, too much screen time, scrolling, like, it can be thousands of different things, and we all have them. But if it turns over to the fact that you would rather do that thing alone in your house, like almost like in a crowd of darkness, that is when you're completely losing the connection. And that's when it becomes into the danger zone.
Yeah.
And so, your event that's coming up, I've got to check with my husband, but I really want to come to that, because it's just like, this is the stuff that, it's different when you run it for yourself. It's not even, you're holding space for everybody else. So it's almost like you're completely other centered. You go to an event and you can be kind of that self-centered, that self-love, that, oh, someone's actually pouring into my cup, so thank you for, what you do.
Oh, and your event that I went to recently, I was like, oh, this is amazing, because I've just, I moved over to Chingford in East London, and so we're finding a community of women closer to this space. It was lovely in your house, and very authentic.
Now and
I love it. I love it. It's something that I really wanted. I want to ask you a little bit about what you have coming up, in terms of your events and ways to work with you.
Ways. Well, so the two, I suppose, major events. So I run every sort of like 3 to 4 months. I run an event with a Reiki master. Her name's Carllye. She's amazing. And so that event is coming up on the 28th of Feb, and it's really, it's very gentle shedding of winter movement. So we do movement gently, just to kind of like, open up. We do breath work to sort of shed, sort of, that kind of like that closing in of winter. We want to start the opening up of spring. So it's called Spring Seeds. And that's at the 28th of Feb. That's in Benjo, and it's at 7:15 to 9:15. And everyone kind of gets Reiki. It's a very calm, lay down, healing event, I suppose. We try to fill up your cup. And then Sound Bath Sonic Love Vicky, who you met. Every year, we ran the first one last year, and we're going to run it again this year because it was wicked. We run a sound bath in the backyard. So we do meditation and breath work in my backyard. And it's a lovely event. She is unbelievable at what she does. And so that's coming up. And believe it or not, it's going to be the strawberry moon, and it's summer solstice. So it's the 21st of June.
Okay,
and so I'm really excited, because that was just awesome last time. Like, people were like they had taken some sort of psilocybin or something.
Wow. So that's on Friday the 21st, is it? Yeah. I'm putting it in my diary now.
Put it in. I don't know how you would work with me. Like, that's a really interesting question. I said, because it's like State of Mind School sort of got launched about 2 years ago, and it's just been evolving. So I suppose really I don't, it's more about what the client needs. Because like, if someone comes to me and they're like, oh, I wouldn't mind losing a bit of weight, but I've got sort of like holding on to this emotional stuff, like it's like you've got different, tools in your tool belt. So I suppose it's just really, like my kind of tagline is, like helping women over 40, because that's kind of my journey of like to live the rest of their lives, the best of their lives. And I say that because it's like, for so long, I thought, this is it. I'm never going to be able to give up alcohol. I'm never going to get rid of this, like, because of what happened, and now I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I can hear the birds sing. Like, that's how I liken it. I couldn't hear the birds sing before, and now sorry, I can hear the birds sing. That's what it feels like. It's like someone has removed something from me, and
you're present again. You're in this moment rather than in your past. Reminds me of this, like a somatic practice where you focus on connecting to the sounds and hearing what's around you. You're in the moment rather than living out your traumas.
hear the birds again. Maybe I should change my tagline so you can hear the birds again.
I think people would understand. So people can
An
work with
element
you.
of weirdness.
People can work with you one-to-one in
Yeah.
person in Hartford, and
Yeah.
they can also work with you online.
Yeah, all over the world. Being Australian, I've got a lot of Australian clients. I mean, the time difference is sometimes a bit rotten where I have to get up at
Yes.
5, but I don't know. I really enjoy what I do. So I suppose that,
Amazing.
yeah.
Thank you so
No,
much
thank
for
you.
just sharing your journey and being so vulnerable and open. And yeah, just really wanted to commend you for that
Thank
because
you.
such a
I might have to
privilege.
cry now. No, I'm gonna cry now. I'll take a picture of me crying with
Yeah,
my shoes off.
have a little release, have a little
Promotional video
release.
for you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
my pleasure. And yes, goodbye to everyone from the podcast. And just to just to let you know, we have another one that's being released this month and some events and retreats coming up. So keep your eyes out, keep looking on my Instagram socials for that. And until next time, goodbye.
Bye.